The Anguilla Progressive Movement from launch over the weekend. What's your reaction?
I have very mixed feelings about the question of politics in Angola. There is far too much politics, and there's far too little remembrance, adherence to the Angola Revolution. Angola, as you know, is an island which is stuck between and behind French and Dutch territories to the south, and to the west we have the Virgin Islands, British and US Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. We have had a history of nomadic life, so to speak. At one time we were called the nomads of the Caribbean because we had to travel far and wide in search of a living, because the British cemented us with an unwilling association with St. Kitts Nevis many years ago, and the Angolans have always rebelled against that idea. Like every other colonial territory, we have a history of slavery and then colonial exploitation, neglect by the administering power, and because of our divisions in Angola after the revolution, during the revolutionary days, Angola were a united people, but from the moment that party politics was introduced to the island was divided, and we get more and more divisions every day. So today Angola is lost. Is lost in the sense that the best of our people do not understand what is happening to Angola. The fact that we are so divided, we are so party political, that some people can't speak to other people because there are different political parties. So I feel very perturbed at what's happening. Because even though the new party has been announced and have some very good people who are coming forward, young people who are coming forward to get involved, I don't think they truly understand the true nature of the Angola situation. We have a Prime Minister in England right now who, to me, seems to be a racist, apart from a lot of other things undesirable. He's fighting with Brexit, and he doesn't care, he doesn't respect democracy, he doesn't respect even his own parliament, his own political party, and he has no regard whatsoever for black people, or colonial people. After the storm, Irma, Dorothea Hodge, who was then Angola's representative in London, and Josephine Cana, who's a local Angola jurist, a genuine Angolan, the most genuine Angolan that I have known since the revolution. They came out and they were very critical of the British not showing any interest in the destroyed country called Angola after Hurricane Irma. And we were comparing what happened in St. Martin, French and Dutch, where the Dutch royal family was showing interest in that St. Martin, 16 square miles, and the French president and ministers of government from France came to the 21 square mile that they own in French St. Martin. So because of the Dorothea and Josephine Gums-Cana, the Boris Johnson, who was then foreign secretary, came to Angola. And one of the comments he made was that our airport was inadequate. Now, it's very hypocritical, because for over 40 years, the French particularly wanted to put a jet international airport in Angola, which they could use, because the topography in St. Martin does not lend itself for a meaningful airport, French St. Martin. And they wanted to link French St. Martin with Angola, which is 8 miles sea between the two islands. And we've had situations where the French wanted to do so much for Angola: airport, seaport, electricity, water, because these are the very things that the British government said they would do when they invaded Angola in 1969. To satisfy the world powers and the United Nations, they said the invasion was to take care of the neglected infrastructure of Angola.
There are a number of persons in the APM who were part of the AUM. Was the formation, as they call it, the rebranding of this party, discussed with you?
Not at all. Not at all. But I know there were certain elements, selfish elements, who infiltrated the AUM some time ago and wanted to promote their own agenda. And they happened to be close, very close to the leader, Dr. Webster. And they were able to get their agenda across by manipulating the situation so that they can get more influence on Dr. Webster. I know about them. I won't call their names. And this is why I'm so worried, because you see, Angola cannot afford this politics that's going on in this country. People, you know, in every society you have givers and takers. And in Angola you have too many givers and too many takers and too little givers. Everybody wants something out of nothing. And the clique is getting smaller and smaller every day as the world develops. So I wish Dr. Webster well. I think he means well. But I think he's coming under some influences that he got to be careful about.
So what do you think are the chances of the new party in the next election?
Well, my position has always been, and you know that too, I have been calling for national government in Angola. I mean, an island 35 square miles with less than 13,000 people, and people are leaving every day and floating off to the United Kingdom now that we have a British passport once again. And our country cannot develop without people. The fact that we are diminishing in population, our economy cannot grow. And the only way it's going to grow if you're going to encourage meaningful investment. And you cannot encourage meaningful investment in an island like Angola unless you're going to give significant concessions to the investors. We don't have a proper infrastructure. We have a tourism industry that's very fragile. People have to come here by open boat from the airport in St. Martin. And that's because they can't, proper planes can't land in Angola. We don't have the airport. And it's not by accident, it's by design. It's by British design. And Angolans fall in the trap by playing party politics. What we need in Angola is a national government. And I've always been saying that. The constitutional advance that occurred in the Caribbean, from Guyana right down to Belize, was due to the fact that there was one socialist labor movement, because everything was fought on the plantations. In St. Kitts in those days, they called it the plantocracy, government by the plantocracy, by the planter. And we had one labor movement struggling on the plantations for a better way of life out of wage slavery. And because there were one labor movement, constitutional advance was easier. We cannot get meaningful constitutional advance with the type of division that persists in Angola. And that's my worry.
Chief, be that as it may though, in terms of the fact that you expressed your disappointment that you were not even consulted, a senior politician, a very successful politician in Angola, and held a party that you have been very, very much at the forefront of. What advice though, if the APM were to come to you, what advice would you give them at this time?
Well, I'm prepared to remind them that the revolutionary element that Ronald Webster and his colleagues, all those women like Daisy Wong Richardson, Mina Bryan, and others, are fought for from 1967 onward. That revolutionary element must be reenacted, must be reinforced, because if they stray too far away from that, Angola will be eventually a little Haiti. That's the way I see it. So I would like to remind them of the need to look back at that revolution and try to maintain the spirit of the revolution. Try to come together, try to unite. There is far too much politics in Angola, too little economics, too little social and economic development.
It's just over 4 years now since you left the political arena in terms of not seeking representation. How would you, how would you say the Angola United Front administration has done though?
Well, I think the Angola United Front is a political party. It's far too much politics. I think there's far too little consultation with people who are not members or closely related to the party. We had a constitutional exercise, which is not going to give us the best because the opposition was not properly involved. We believe that British governors are to be trusted. They forget the atrocities committed on the British governors over the centuries in these territories. And the British said that our constitution was good for purpose. And we were talking of constitutional change for over 30 years. And every other territory went ahead. Even the Cayman Islands, which didn't have a ministerial system, today has a much more respectable and advanced constitution than Angola has, all because the Caymans were united. The Caymanians were united, while the Angolans are still divided. And you can't continue like that. Don Mitchell was appointed to do a constitutional exercise to find out what the people really want. And he is now on the rampage because he's not satisfied that the government has taken his report seriously and giving the British what they want. Because every time Angola Constitution opened, since 1975-76, Britain was able to take back from Angola much of the autonomy that we had in the original Ardent Council, 1975 Ardent Council, which gave us our first ministerial system in 1976. They've been able to retrieve a lot of power from the local elected representatives, and today we have very little authority. For instance, Britain said they give us £60 million. The French promised to give French St. Martin £3 billion. That's 3 billion euros, as much as £3 billion today. The Dutch gives 565 million to the Dutch side. And we get a pause a little, 60 million. And up to date, the governor has that under control. How could a British governor be responsible for Angola's rehabilitation? I mean, I said to the governor, when he came to see me first, I said, you seem to be a very nice man. But whether you're a good governor will depend on how you perform. And as far as I'm concerned, he is still a British governor. He's still appointed by the Foreign Commonwealth Office. He's still a diplomat. And I said, when I was in government and Billingham came here as the minister, I said to him, you have a governor who's doing more politics in Angola than a politician. And you know what he said? It's the policy of the British government nowadays to appoint governors who are senior diplomats. And I said, but we don't need diplomats in Angola. We are not a foreign country. We are a British responsibility. What we need is a proper administrator to administer the island. But the governors play too much politics, are allowed to play too much politics in the Angola affair, which is completely wrong.
What about what's your take on the current situation regarding Brexit? And how is Angola going to be a winner or loser when this is all over?
Judging from history, Angola would lose significantly. Because with the European Union, we were able to be included with other territories, like for instance the Dutch and French territories under the European Union. They have had respectable colonial relationships with their metropolitan powers, France and Dutch. And because we were now in their company, we were treated much more decently than under the British. And if we are going back under Britain, I think it's going to be very sad that we are losing that European connection. We have to still forge. We as a distinct territory must try to forge some sort of links with the European Union.
Chief, one of the talking points still on radio and ongoing has been the banking crisis. When the banks were taken over by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in 2013, you were the Chief Minister of the island, and there are those who say you have said little or nothing since that time. What is your current take?
A bank is a very delicate organization. And you don't go about talking too much about the banks. The people who were responsible for running those two local banks, which were doing so well for Angola, and I think even Britain was envious of the fact that little Angolans owned two local banks. Those two little banks were doing well. But too many bad people became directors. They were incompetent, they were mercenaries, and too political again, and they destroyed the banks. Because when people can take $20 million loans and they know how to invest it, and $18 million, when I came to office, there was already a provision to merge the two banks. When I came to office, the National Bank of Angola had not performed for 5 years, and those banks were only allowed 5% non-functioning loans, but National Bank of Angola had almost 60% non-functioning loans. No bank could survive with that type of situation because there's no liquid cash in the bank for it to survive. Caribbean Commercial Bank was a little better, but that too was seriously impaired by the fact that there were too many big loans, mostly by directors and people who were very close to the banks. Now, I came to office as Chief Minister and Minister of Finance in 2010. And from the day I entered the central banks and St. Kitts, I was at war with the bank because of what they were allowing them to happen in Angola. And as a matter of fact, when I saw the danger, I had to really threaten the late Dr. Venner to do something about the situation here. Because if he didn't come at the time, your deposits were jeopardized. But I blame the British too again, because I took the case to Britain, and Simmons, who was then the minister in the Foreign Commonwealth Office, said to me, Mr. Chief Minister, you wouldn't want the Angolan taxpayer to bail out two private local banks. Why would you want the British taxpayer? So I said, that's a very good question. Because you were responsible for the good governance of Angola. And you were told, the British government was told what was going on wrong in Angola for years as far as the banks were concerned. And having responsibility for good governance, they could have intervened. Now they didn't intervene and everything has reached a climax. You can take £100 million and invest in rescuing the two banks, and you could have taken interest in the banks, like you have done in London, like Obama done in the States, and in no time those banks would have rebounded, and the economy would have felt the positive impact of that intervention by you. But instead of that, the British said, oh, those banks can close. So they were not interested in the economy for the people of Angola, a strong economy. They have betrayed Angola instead of administering Angola. Because remember the Rifkin's letter, which came to us in 1996, said that they are going to take over more responsibility for the governance of Angola if we decide to continue to remain as a dependence of Britain. But instead of that, things have gotten much worse under the British administration. Much worse. We are not supposed to be in debt as a colonial territory. Angola is not supposed to be in debt because they say the reasonable needs of Angola must be met, because we had a false charge on British aid. Britain will give Cuba aid. She will give all the dictatorial countries in Asia aid. But Britain does not give us meaningful aid. As a matter of fact, Britain is responsible for the demise of our economy, as far as I'm concerned, because she could have saved the banks, the little £100 million investment, and her investment would have been paid back.
Finally,
she refused to do it.
In relation to the bank, though, the decision that the current Premier Victor Banks took on the banks, could he have done better, you feel, or you're happy with what was done?
Well, whatever he's done, and I don't know all that he's done, I can only surmise, but whatever he has done with complete approval of Her Majesty's government. So you can't blame him completely for everything. The British government is in full compliance, even with the fact that we had borrowed, we've in debt of almost $700 million, which should not be the case. We should not be in debt as a British overseas territory. We should not be in debt because they have the moral obligation, the political obligation to make sure that our reasonable needs are met. And if I had to advise any government, if any government would take my advice, I would demand that the British government pay off all Angola's debt. Because we are not Haiti. They put Guyana in debt, and the French put Haiti in debt, and that's why the people in Guyana have to be traveling around the world today like nomads. Alright? Because Guyana is a rich country. And I always said it, Guyana is a rich country. But after the multinationals could not do what they want to do in Guyana anymore, what they did? They put Guyana in debt. Guyana has all the resources you can think about. No, it's just found oil. And I hope that's not too much exploited by the foreign powers, and the people of Guyana can benefit from the indigenous wealth. But the fact is that Angola's debt should be paid off by Britain.
Chief, finally, any thought about running at large next election? Joining the political arena once again?
As I said before, that will be ironic. I said I wanted to get out of politics and to assist any government in Angola. I'll give them my advice if they're prepared to take it. Because I think we have lost the way. We have lost the way. We are a British overseas territory. We are not independent. And we need to make Britain be a true, force Britain to be a true responsible partner. And I don't think the political directorate in Angola is understanding that.